Hello everyone. This presentation examines the roots of sustainability problem experienced by our society. First of all, I have to warn you that the content of the talk is quite dense. In fact, I will start by introducing three concepts, quite exoteric, but I'm trying to use very simple example to explain them. um, the dissipative systems coming from self-organization in non-equilibrium thermodynamics, the concept of metabolic pattern, that is how this system can generate themselves, expressing autopoiesis and structural coupling, and finally, the special feature of metabolic networks. All these concepts are required to be able to have an analytical framework to analyze the feature of modern society that in reality are generated by a phenomenon of group autocatalysis. In this way, they can reproduce and adapt their identity. Again, I will show you this with a simple example. And finally, I will address the concept of metabolic reefs. What happened? So why human society, societies stopped to behave like element of natural ecosystems. They are not interacting with the rest of natural process like normal living system do. And then within this analytical framework, you can see the existence of two type of constraints that are limiting the use of resources, that an internal limit and external limit. So let's start with the first concept, distributive system. I believe that you should have heard about this concept. This has been introduced by Ilya Prigogine in non-equilibrium thermodynamics. This explains why you can see organized systems. They are different from the environment, and then they can maintain their identity. This is a distributive structure, a tornado, for instance, because they are interacting with their environment and they are using favorable gradient to keep the dissipation of energy inside to keep them different from the environment. So this means that a dissipative structure must be part of a dissipative system. That is, in this system, we can individuate a state pressure relation. This is the state of the dissipative structure, and this system exert a pressure on its environment, and then this implies a structural coupling. They are exchanging flows of matter of energy. The same type of relation can be found for a city. For instance, a city is a dissipative structure, uh, is a concentration of energy, material, information, human beings. They are expressing an autocatalytic set of functions. They are making each other. And also in this case, you have a state that is what happening in the city, the more or less you can predict, you know what you will find there, building, cars, people, and the pressure is the amount of matters, energy, and other input and output that the environment has to provide and absorb from the city. This is a very generic relation. In a living system, you have the state that is depending on the specific information inside the dissipative system, in this case, a horse. You will have a pressure on an admissible environment. And in the same way, for a machine, again, you will have that the information done for making the car and having the function of a car express imply that this machine to operate require the existence of an admissible environment. So this is the first point. You know, if you have a dissipative structure, you have a force relation between what happened inside the system and what happened outside the system. So the second concept this is a little bit more complicated, is the metabolic pattern. So what happened in system they are making themselves by using input and output exchange with their environment. In this case, this is the simple reductionist way of an input getting in the system and getting output. In reality, if in metabolic system, the, the things are a little bit more complicated, you have an autocatalytic process. What is an autocatalytic process? Is the system is generating an output that is used to make itself. So then basically you have this, imagine that this would be a rabbit, for instance. It will eat hay as input, then use this to make internal secondary input, let's see, fiber, protein, carbohydrate, and then these secondary inputs are used to make the rabbit, and then you have the action here. So what happened at this point is that you have an internal set of process getting inside and external process getting outside. The outside process are generating a supply and a sink capacity, and internal process are the one that are reproducing the rabbit in this case, but it could be a tiger or could be a human being. So what is important? We are using here the jargon on non-equilibrium thermodynamic. The internal information here is generating what is called a positive entropy surplus, and what happened outside make possible to handle this dissipation of surplus of entropy by providing negative entropy. This will be flux or negative entropy. That it is what the system needs to survive. Okay. So if you are looking about what in relation to the discussion of resources, then we have two different type of flows. Flows that are inside under human control, and flows that are outside human control. So the primary flows are the one coming from the environment and going to the environment. In order to stabilize these flows, you need supply capacity and sink capacity. These must be given by the environment. So these are the resources. And these are internal resources, I like to say, that are produced and consumed by the system according to the information, to the identity of the system. Okay, so natural resources are about primary flows. Why it is important to do all this conceptualization? Because we very often discuss about flows, energy, oil, gasoline, but it's not the same. Gasoline is here, oil is here. Okay, so why it is important? Because the metabolic system do have an identity that is a historic identity, and they define on their own what is a primary flow, a secondary flow. So for instance, hay is a primary flow for a rabbit, but not for a tiger, and a rabbit is food for a tiger, but not for a donkey. In this case, you have a example of a primary flow ham that is a food for a Catholic priest, but is not food for an imam, because Muslims do not eat pork. So why this is relevant? Because if we are discussing about what is a resource, what is not a resource, really you cannot look just at the thing here, a ham, but you have to look at the interaction on how this thing is used by a system and what is the system of control that is determining the metabolic pattern of the system. Okay, we can go to the next concept, metabolic network. This is important because the metabolic network are generating mutual information that is they define what is in complex system analysis called downward and upward causation. And then they are the one that made possible to use the analytical framework that I'm presenting here. Okay, so this is an example of a metabolic network. I don't know if you're familiar with it. This is an ecosystem. So basically, a plant are eaten by herbivores, they are eaten by carnivores, eaten by other carnivores. When they die, they go to the detritus feeder compartment that is get back to the plant. So basically, you have a system in which each component is helping the others to do what they are doing. So basically, you have that this is an autocatalytic set. Let's have it here in a more schematized way. You have that in this network, this individual element can reproduce themselves, so they remain the same in terms of structural component, and they are having a set of structural coupling with each other. So what happened, what is about mutual information is that if at a certain point I take out the structural element in B, basically I can still define the image in this network of the element B. Okay, and this reflects what the network is expecting and knows about the element B. Just to give you an example, so this would be the ecological network niche of a rabbit. So this is what this ecosystem is expecting by rabbit. And then you will have the direct information. This will be the genetic information that is needed to make rabbit. So one thing is how to make rabbit. This is what's written in the DNA, and this is how the rabbit should behave or what they should do. And this is not written in DNA, but is written in is not written, but is defined by the mutual information defined in the network. Okay. So what happened here is basically we have a self-organization due to the structural coupling. Then we have here a notional element, a network niche that map onto structural types. So this would be a functional type, what the herbivore should do in this network. And this is the structural type, what herbivores are inside this compartment. So this is what we can define. Downward causation is what the whole is expecting for the part and what the part are doing for the whole. And of course, and this is what we call autopoietic process, because these things are making themselves and preserve their own identity. And that's where the other one is making themselves and preserving their identity, but at another level. Okay, so here we have an impredicative relation between the two sets of identity. Okay, this is what the structural element can do, and this is what the functional element should do. Okay. Okay, so basically, this is the relational structural coupling of the whole ecosystem, and this is the self-referential autopoiesis of the structural types. Inside here, a rabbit makes a rabbit, and that's it. So its job is to remain alive and to reproduce itself and to express its expected behavior. Okay, so this is an information coming already from the past, but is updated by things happening now. Whereas this information is coming from the past, it remains stored in the autocatalytic system, the self-referential autopoiesis. Okay, now what has to do all of this with the metabolic pattern of society or the identity of society? Okay, so we can imagine a society that composed by the different constituent components. The household sector is about reproducing humans. So this is needed to provide human activity to the various compartments. Then you have agricultural sector that produce food and biomass for everyone else. Energy sector produce energy carriers and materials for the others, for itself and for the other. Manufacturing and construction produce exosomatic device, be machine, house, infrastructure. And what is important here, where it is the autocatalytic set, is that each one of these sector is using inputs from the others and giving ipson inputs to the other. Let's see. If we are imagining that one component like energy mining is producing things according to a biophysical production function that is done with autocatalysis, you have that you need human activity, biomass, power capacity, building infrastructure, and electricity, fuel, and heat to generate energy carriers. This is what the energy mining system does. And then what happened here, that yes, he in fact is producing electricity, fuel, heat, but one part of what is producing is used by itself to operate, okay? That we can imagine that the same occur from the other considered component. The agricultural sector generate biomass, plant and animal biomass for itself. It will be the seeds of the animal or the feed for animals, and for the other compartment. The household sector produce human activity for running itself and also for the other. This is the working time going into the other sectors, and the manufacturing and construction the same. So what happened, where you get the autocatalytic set? Because you can see the energy sector, the agricultural sector, the household sector, the manufacturing and construction. And then you can see basically that this set of considered components are making each other, okay? What is important here is that we can do a quantitative analysis. We know the amount of these flows, or we can measure this hour per year, kilowatt hour, megajoule, kilos of plant, kilos for animal, kilowatt of power capacity, tons of cement. And so we can actually describe this set of relation. In general, we use a matrix, and then we can represent a society as a set of force relation. Okay. We should be noted here that we have only secondary flows. Only flows they are produced and consumed. So these are the internal flows that we saw before. Now, what about primary flows? We can use a metabolic processor to track simultaneously secondary flows and primary flows. And then in this case, we will have that these are what we said before, the autocatalytic process of energy mining, which is doing something for itself and for the other. But at the same time, you can measure how much solar radiation, wind, uranium, depletion of stock, hydro, and greenhouse emission. This compartment is taking and dumping into the environment. So basically, you have that for each compartment, you can have how much they are producing and getting and giving to the other compartment inside the society, and how much they are getting and dumping into the environment. Okay, so basically what happened is that this is what they are dumping or getting from the environment, from the ecosphere, and this is what is coming in the autocatalytic set into the anthroposphere. Okay. Okay. So again, I don't have time, of course, but all this can be done with numbers. We have been doing this for 10 years. We have numbers. As a matter of fact, it's very interesting. You get a lot of patterns. This system have attractors, so you can define typology of countries. The values for North Europe are different from South Europe, from Africa. I can guess it is like for the temperature of the body. You can say a human being has 37 degrees. You don't need to measure it. So you can say a rich country has 300 megajoule per hour of energy consumption in the industrial sector, 8 in the household sector. I mean, you can really use quantitative analysis of society using this approach. But okay, let's go down to the metabolic rift. So what is the metabolic rift? Was introduced by John Bellamy Foster, and basically is a radical rupture in the process of self-organization, that basically the metabolism of human society is no longer compatible with the process of metabolic network of ecological system. So basically, this is how in the technosphere we are reproducing labor, land, and technology. This would be the fantasy of the circular economy, that we are reproducing humans, technology, or land use on our own. In reality, this is not true, because in order to have this reproduction, you need inputs that are coming from the environment, and you are producing waste that have been dumped into the environment. So what happened here is that the size, how much people, how much technology, how much land uses you need here must be compatible with how much ecosystem activity you have, and in terms of size of fund, forest, aquifer, and things, and flow fund ratio, how much water you take out per hectare, and then this is how much water you get out per hectare in terms of land use. And then the two things must be compatible, okay? So what happened here, you can see that basically this is the history of humankind and this human population, the energy consumption. More or less we had, without the metabolic rift, we were using energy, and the population was more or less compatible with the circulation of nature. And at a certain point, something happened. We stopped to use flows coming from fund, respecting the recycling of nature. And we moved to the exploitation of flow coming from stocks, fossil energy, basically. And then what are the two types of constraints? One constraint is an external constraint. We do not have enough fund to do what we want to do. This is an example. This is the energy consumption of our modern society, the density. So this is the in logarithmic scale. So the differences are pretty big. And then you can see that our society is powered by stock flow. These are they are not renewable. These are just stock of fossil energy that has a very high density, so they can feed this. Whereas if you go on biomass, the biomass is not enough. So basically, if when you had pre-industrial times, we didn't have a lot of city. As a matter of fact, almost no city at all. So what happened, you can already see that if you have this type of society, forget about biofuels, because biofuels are worse than biomass, because then you have to spend energy to make them. So the net energy supply is even lower than the original biomass. Okay. But I mean, this is the, let's say, external constraints. At a certain point, you do not have enough land to generate this amount of energy. And even worse is the constraints on the budget of human activity. Given a demographic structure, you have that only a certain part of the population is active, and this population have to sleep, and then basically you have a physiological overhead on the amount of time of this population. So you start with 8,760 hours per year. That is the hour that we are active in a year. including the sleeping, but you have to take sleeping out here, then this is the amount of time that potentially could be used. But one part of this time go away in the household chore, commuting, leisure, study, and culture. These data are real. I mean, I'm not making up. I mean, you can get it from, again, we publish a lot of papers, not the problem. So basically, if you make all the calculation, basically we have per capita 660 hours per year in invested in paid work. But what is more most amazing is that the vast majority of this goes in the service sector. So basically, we almost have no time at all to generate energy carriers and to generate food. You know, it's very well known. As soon as it became rich, the fraction of the workforce in agriculture goes lower than 5%, 3%, 2% in rich countries, Canada and United States, and energy and mining even worse. So basically 60% is required to reproduce individual, 30% to reproduce household, and 7%, 7.5% to work in the economy, in the pay work. So here really what define what is the resources or not. I will give you an example. This is difficult, but this is the last one. So if we manage to go through this, this is done. You start with a certain amount of time, and then with a certain amount of energy that we spend per capita per year. And then, again, this is split between the household and the service sector and the productive sector. This goes into the household, depending on different type of household. Then you have the service sector. Then you have the manufacturing construction. Each of these compartment has its own level of energy consumption. So basically, you can see that it's like for the human being, you have a liver, the brain, the muscle, they are not consuming the same amount of energy per kilo. No, then what is important for calculating the whether or not a prime energy source is a resource, let's see how the energy is used on these different components of the society. These are basically organs of a human being, and you can see basically one, that you must have an energy source with a very high return on what is invested, but this is not the real issue. The real issue is this one. You have to run all your energy sector with 8 hours per year per capita. This is huge in the sense, even if we had the oil field in Europe, we couldn't do that. We can do that because we are importing oil, gas, and not even paying for it. We are just making debt. So what happened here, that in an energy source at the moment in rich country has to be making possible to deliver 15 gigajoule of energy per hour of work in the energy sector. If you are looking at this, what happened with the, for instance, biofuel are in the order of 100 megajoule. So if you would use the biofuels, you would have probably 100 hour here. That then is not possible. This is a sort of Sudoku. The sum of this must be this, and the sum of this must be this, no? And then basically, if you put 100 hours in the energy and mining, all the other function or organs of the society could not be operated. Okay, I'm not expecting that this is extremely clear, but I'm with the time limitation. I'm just trying to illustrate the logic of the analytical framework. Okay, so what happened is at the moment, how are we working? Basically, there is no metabolic interaction with the environment. We are using energy with stock depletion, fossil energy. We are depleting the fund, the aquifer, for instance. We are polluting by using pesticide and fertilizer the land, and then we are filling the things, but above all, we are importing whatever. The amount of import is amazing. Uh, we import the equivalent of 100 million workers in Europe that will be required to produce what we are consuming, and then 70% of the animal feed, 80% of energy. So our metabolic pattern is totally unfeasible if you're looking at the natural resources that would be required. Okay, so what is basically with this type of analysis, you can have two level of analysis. At one level, you are looking at what kind of society do we want, because then how you are distributing these flows on a different consider component affect your quality of life. And in fact, in rich country, the vast majority of time, energy, resources goes in the service sector and the household, and then this guarantee high quality of life. Whereas on the other hand, you have to go to the lower level analysis to see how do you produce what we metabolize, and then you have to track the flows that go into the autocatalytic loop of each of the element making up the society. The conclusion is, okay, in this way you can have an analysis of the matrix of end use inside the society, the environmental pressure that we are exerting on the environment, the trade. So this is the viability, what are the internal limits, the external limits, whether or not we are happy with what we are getting in terms of effective interaction, and then how much we are dependent on import. All of these can be measured, can be analyzed, can be studied. It is really unclear why we don't do it, and we keep using ridiculous economic analysis that for in relation to sustainability are totally useless because you cannot see any of the relevant factors. Okay. If you want to have additional information, you can write me and I can try to answer to your question and send more material.